right, so today on the Soundiron podcast, we have Zach Heyde. He's a composer and content creator based in Pasadena, California, and he is also on YouTube. I've watched several of his videos focused on composing, tackling the hard-hitting issues like how much should you charge, how to orchestrate, very important things. So Zach, thrilled to have you on the podcast, man. Welcome.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, good to be here.
So first of all, it says you're an obsessive coffee roaster. Tell me about that.
Yeah. So I just started that hobby, I think like 3 months ago. I literally have coffee I roasted now. But
Okay.
I've always been into coffee. I traveled abroad in Vienna in 2014, and that's when I first tasted good coffee.
All right.
I was like, oh, I didn't know coffee could actually be good. So slowly over the years, it's grown from being just like, let me grind my coffee at home to like, let me find a good brewer. And then eventually, like a couple months ago, I was like, why don't I just try and roast it at home? And it's very difficult, actually.
It is very difficult.
Yeah. I guess, do you guys roast too, either of you?
I don't roast them because I've seen the smoke and fire alarm business and all that. But what's your favorite brewing method?
So right now I literally just do like pour over.
Yeah, same.
I keep it easy. You know, I've tried a couple different ones like French roast, French press and stuff too. But you know, because my wife drinks coffee too, I'm like, the easiest way is just to, you know, have it for both of us. But honestly, I think grinding your own coffee is the best way to make it taste better faster.
Agreed.
Like roasting is really great to roast at home, but not for everybody. But grinding is like, it takes 2 seconds. You could buy a cheap grinder even, and it's like a lot better.
It's definitely worth the investment. All right. Well, that was the sidebar of the day, but
good chatting with you guys.
Yeah, right. Have a good one.
The Soundiron Coffee Podcast. All right, later, guys.
So something more fresh is you just dropped a video scoring the Mario Brothers trailer, but actually using Mario's theme, and I just watched that like 20 minutes ago. Amazing cue. Nice work.
Thanks, man.
You used a lot of instrumentation. A lot of orchestrating. You said it took like 7 hours and then 3 hours of videoing.
Yeah, pretty much. Which I know for some people, maybe that's not a lot of time, and it's totally different for everybody. But for me, I try to do like 3 hours of work per minute of music on average. So like that was pushing past what I usually try to do. Right. But I also at the same time, you know, it's just about when it sounds good to you. So there's no right answer on how long it should take you.
Yeah, deadlines. How do you start a project like that?
So it varies. I think that one worked out pretty well because I spent time thinking about it before I went into the DAW. Yeah. I think that some of my best work happens when I can actually sit and think. Like I took a walk and was just thinking about how I'd actually approach it. And that's when I got an idea for the ending where I was kind of using that that came like just basically while I was taking my walk. Usually the good ones start away from the DAW because I think if you start in the DAW, you're immediately just tinkering around with stuff, you know? Yeah. You have to like edit. You wind up hitting undo more than you probably normally would because you're not really having an idea when you go in. Then from there, I usually will do, if I, again, am like disciplined about it, some sort of piano sketching just to get some ideas. But also very often it could just be me like under a tight deadline, just going straight to orchestra. But most of it has to come from internal ear because like I said, if you're just messing around, you can work it out eventually, but it takes a lot longer and it's a lot more painful, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I really liked how you used the elements of his theme, but you were slowing down certain sections and like changing the instrumentation, obviously.
Yeah, a lot of that's like in the piano sketch too. Yeah, for sure. Because it's tough to balance both of those things at the same time, like good orchestration or mixing and good composing and arranging.
Agreed. And like it's easy to go cheesy with it, like on remixes. So you nailed it.
Thanks.
Tell me about your start in piano, because you're very skilled on the piano. Like a lot of composers are not like fluent on the piano like you are.
I'm losing it a little bit because I like now my right hand can still play really well and my left hand is
all right.
I can do a fader great on the left hand, but I started when I was really young. I mean, I kind of composed at the same time that I was learning piano, mostly because I didn't realize there was a difference between playing other people's music and writing your own. I started taking lessons when I was 7.
Okay.
And it was all classical. I wasn't really into it, honestly, because it was like Mozart and Haydn and music that just did not relate to me at that age.
Sure.
And I was pretty ready to quit, actually, by the time I was 13. But my parents convinced me to stay for another year and then begged my piano teacher, please find him something he likes. So, they found Rachmaninoff, which really resonated with me because it was powerful and emotional and loud. And so I continued doing piano lessons, through the time that I was writing music. And I took piano all the way up till, I think, second year of college when I was doing some jazz piano as well. And I think jazz chops actually really helped me a lot because as helpful as classical was, jazz introduced me to improv and being more experimental with harmony. And so the way I compose is pretty much in sync, I think, with a lot of how I improvise as well, too, just in a slower way.
Yeah. Do you have any advice for a composer who's not as comfortable around the piano, like exercises or like practice?
I mean, I think that it's good to practice voicings for sure, because I think voicings on the piano are really tactile, a physical way to learn how to voice. So I think that that's really important or useful for sure. But I'm also not a huge believer that you have to be a really proficient pianist. I think that a lot of people look at my channel and really just think like, oh wow, he writes so fast. How do I write fast like that? And I always try to tell people like there's just as many drawbacks to writing quickly as there are to writing slowly. Because if you're writing quickly, you're hitting undo a lot more. You have the ability to write fast, which is not always good. And I know plenty of like proficient composers who are literally just using mouse and keyboard to write in their music. So I'm sure it is frustrating to do it that way sometimes. But yeah, and I mean, honestly, just the boring stuff for practicing piano, like scales and arpeggios are really useful too.
Yeah.
Most people practice too quickly. So I always tell people to practice it slow. Like I was always taught, practice it slow, break down rhythms. If you're doing scales, like accent different alternating notes so that you can learn the scale with different emphasis. And then when you go to do it at a normal emphasis, which is also just straight notes, it's a lot easier, but it takes time, obviously, a lot of time practice.
Yeah, I'm like, man, I wish I would have been playing piano like around the same time I started playing guitar. Because when I was a kid, I didn't really care. I was just like woodshedding all day because it was just fun. But it's like when you get older and you feel like you have this like impending need to like, I need to be good at this now, or else like this, I'm not going to get good at that.
Yeah.
And it kind of makes you feel like there's way more pressure on you than it is just like playing for fun.
And I mean, I've felt that way about other aspects too. I mean, like I'm not great with percussion. Like as a performer or even programmer, I struggle with it a lot. It's not intuitive to me because I didn't really learn it. Whereas like I have a good buddy who is a proficient percussionist, so his music really integrates that. And I think that your music is probably a combination of your strengths, but also your weaknesses. Like your limitations as a musician is also part of what makes your voice. So I don't think it's something that is necessarily problems that need to be fixed. Like I got into orchestration kind of late. So it took me it was a very uphill battle for me to like learn how to orchestrate, write orchestral music, even though I wanted it really badly. But I think that even some of the limitations I have there are probably part of what makes my music sound a specific way, whether it's like slightly less classical than some other, well-versed orchestrators.
Because you said you were doing some jazz piano and stuff. Was there anything you were trying to do after music school or anything like that?
I kind of knew I wanted to do film music or media music since I was really young, like 14. So for me, I didn't have any other option. It was kind of like that's like what I did. So that's what I decided I would do. But I didn't go for media music, actually. I went for classical composition, which was definitely a wake-up call in some ways, because I didn't realize that there were two different cultures around music. I mean, there's more than two, but I became aware that there were cultures around music. And I remember I wound up really liking this teacher, but my first experience with this guy was, I remember I walked in to a composition lesson 101, and he was playing some music, and foolishly I was like, oh wow, that sounds like John Williams. And my classical composition teacher was like, yeah, that's what I was afraid of. And I was like, oh, that's odd. I thought that was a compliment.
And then you start hearing all the things of like the stuff that he was inspired by when he was doing Star Wars and all that, and you're like, oh, okay. Like you see all these videos now where it's like, well, actually,
yeah,
sounds like it because of this.
It's interesting, right? And I mean, it was like that never bothered me. I was just like, okay, it's just lineage, it's just people take inspiration. It's just what we do. But there's definitely, depending on who you talk to, people can have different ideas of what good music is or what serious music is. And so it kind of messed with my head for a while. Like I almost changed majors because I was like, this doesn't feel like what I thought a composer would, what it's supposed to feel like. And I felt very disconnected from the people I was talking to because everybody was into like really 20th century music, 21st century music. And I was like, I don't get this. So I actually wound up going full circle because by the end of college, I just kind of doubled down on what I was already doing, which was media music. And I was like, I'm going to just lean into this harder. Happened to find a really good friend there in college named Frank, who we wound up doing a bunch of piano duets with after college. But he was kind of in my camp. So we were the rebels of the college by doing normalish music in a way, like the rebels by doing something that's not rebellious, I guess.
Yeah, it's funny that makes me think of this composer. I don't know if you've ever heard of Chris Velasco, but he does a lot of video game music. And I remember he was saying in an interview that when he was in music school, that he was saying that he wanted to do music for video games, and they were basically like, that's garbage.
Yeah, and for sure.
And now he does tons of video game stuff. He's making a living off of it, and I'm just like, it's crazy how like certain people in school can almost kind of like steer you away from what you thought you were wanting to do just by some kind of comment like that. Or you can take it and say, nope, I'm gonna just push
exactly. You could take it as a test, and everybody. I try to be more forgiving now. Like it really ticked me off at the time because I felt like a minority of my beliefs because it was like me and my buddy Frank and a couple other people, and then everybody else would just like crap on music that had triads, and I was like, man, that's a shame. So it like messed with me then, but also now I'm like, there's a lot of pressure when you're in school to write music that I guess is academic and intellectual, and so I'm sure those people are feeling the pressure, and so people just say stuff, or people have different, people are entitled to different beliefs about it or what it is to make music for a living. I just always felt like if I wanted to do this for a living, that media music made sense. I tend to like music that has story and is narrative, and I didn't like music that felt alienating, that would like push an audience away, or that an audience couldn't understand that. That's just something. It's just what I was born writing. So I think maybe if I was born writing odd music, then I'd have to form beliefs around the kind of music that I already like.
Yeah, I think some people kind of want to be in this like upper echelon of like music or whatever. Because there's times I've posted stuff and you see people just like rip you down, like, oh, like violas wouldn't do that. Or blah, blah, blah,
I'm getting it too now. Yeah, I'm getting some of the videos that do particularly better than others. I'm starting to see. I did a video on how much composers should charge, and somebody called me greedy for charging. For composers charging more than 1,000 per minute of music, and I was like, I could argue with this, or I could just like hide the comment.
You can't please everyone, but I mean, if you're getting a lot of traffic and you're getting some people throwing some snarky comments at you, you're probably doing something right.
Exactly. I think it's just the offset, and you don't know the age or the level of experience of different people or their backgrounds. I mean, people could have opinions for all sorts of reasons. So, ultimately, I just want to give good content out there. But I also that's why I'm a big believer in like making sure that even though I'm doing music that's kind of traditional and kind of classical for the most part, I don't want to alienate people, and I don't want to use language that makes people feel like that there's a gatekeeper between their interest in that music and their ability to learn that music. That's part of what I love about YouTube, is that it feels very open and explorative and free for people to learn this kind of stuff without the gatekeepers.
Yeah. YouTube is such a great resource. I mean, like when I was first getting into stuff, I was watching trying to find any video that I can. It's like now it's even more, especially your channel. I think your channel is great. Like I watch a lot of your videos when you post them.
Thanks.
Because I don't know. I can't remember how I came across your channel, but I was just like, this dude seems really nice. He, can give information very, concisely, and and I really like what you're doing. That's why I was like, man, I want to get this guy on the podcast. Like,
Thank you.
yeah,
Well,
I think you're doing a great job.
I do believe in the concise content too, because I think that there is some content out there that's like people want to get information out there, but also you're balancing two different skills. You're balancing the composition head and the orchestration, the arranging, but then there's also like the content and YouTube and video creation. And I think it's really hard to balance both. You have to really have two brains for it, So yeah, I'm trying to make my content feel digestible at the same time that it's giving extra information out there. I think you guys are too. It's like it's good packaging, and it's just people's time should be respected on YouTube because there's a lot of content out there. So the more concise it is, I think the more people watch.
Yeah, you definitely have to like balance that, because like there's times where I like watch videos I've done and I'm like, you're talking too much, or like you don't even say all that, or that kind of thing. But it's just like you have to do it so you can see what you do and that you don't like, and then try to like bring it down. Like the last video I posted was like around 15 minutes, but then I've done some that were like 45 minutes, because it's just
me
like,
too.
You're trying to get so much information in there in a way that you're trying to show people how stuff being used or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's definitely pretty hefty balancing act in that way.
Some people love that though, the uncut 45-minute content, and I still do that. I just put that on Patreon because it's like I get it. I get that like you want to see it uncut and you learn more that way, but also not always the best format for YouTube for like people who are scrolling through. If it's like an hour and a half, like the Mario thing took 5.5 hours to compose. So I'm like, I'm probably not going to put that on YouTube. I don't think that's going to generate a lot of traffic, you know?
I think that's smart though, because I think for the people who are really into your stuff are going to want to, support you on Patreon to see that more full process, because I think there is a lot to learn in that, because they're watching you kind of think and try stuff or undo stuff and go back. Like, because that's what everyone else is going to be doing. So if they could see what you're doing and maybe learn from anything that you're doing, like, oh, I want to take that out or do this, like they're seeing that whole process. And I think they'll take that in.
That one's very raw, because I 5.5 hours of composing, like all of the I'm recording for YouTube mindset, like was gone by the end of it.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, I'd be like sitting there for 30 minutes. I don't say a word. And I'm like, I'm going to bed. It just starts over the next day, I
know. I probably have a few moments where I'm just like face palming it, like I don't know what I'm doing at this part.
Yep, for sure.
We'll go roast some coffee. I'll be right back.
Right.
So you did a video called "The Secret to Masterful Orchestration" 3 weeks ago, and you have like here's muddy over here, and you have here's clear over here, which I really like. It's good thumbnail. But thanks. I mean, you were just like blasting information for almost 26 minutes that covered like at least half a semester of my orchestration class in college. So it's definitely a great way to learn orchestration with so many audio examples and video examples. And I was hoping you could share a few tips as far as like, here's a couple quick tips or hacks for the strings, the winds, the brass.
Sure. Yeah. With strings, I would say that some of the things that I've learned recently is you can have a lot wider registers and fill in more of those registers. Obviously, you can use DeVisi and things like that. But I remember I was doing a score study recently of a John Powell cue I really like. I'm pointing like you know where I'm pointing towards my library of scores. But there's a great cue from How to Train Your Dragon 2. I don't want to spoil anything if you haven't seen it, but it's a sad scene. And one of the things that blew my mind when I was checking out that sequence in the score was the strings are actually doing like the melody, harmony, bass, but they're doing the whole thing. Like if I was a pianist and doing it like with two hands, that and an octave lower, identically. It just doesn't look that way on the score because of the way that everybody's divided, and like cello may be higher than like viola or something, for example. But if you actually break it down and do a piano reduction, it's literally like two-hand piano stacked twice in octaves. And it gives this like super lush, almost like an organ sound, like an organ with some extra stops, because you get that full harmonic range with the octaves of everything. So that's something I think that's kind of unique to strings that you can do, is you can layer. You're going to lose some volume when you do DeVisi because you're losing players, but it's a really good way to get some like powerful lush sound. For brass, because you have more players and ability to voice, and also because they're louder, I usually tell people you want to avoid doubling any one note, particularly like at the unison. You want to avoid the doubling, but brass is also going to dominate in a lot of ways. So you don't necessarily want to have brass doing a voicing and then having strings and winds doubling at the unison, because it's just not necessary unless you're talking about like a quiet register. So like in that video, for example, I had brass doing pretty full chord, mostly in the mid register. Strings and winds are taking the highs and some of the lows as well, basically just expanding the ranges outwards. And then for the winds, with those kinds of voicings, they can either like augment and accentuate the high registers and the low registers again, or they can sort of support the strings. So when I orchestrate and it's a full ensemble section, I'm usually thinking of the strings and winds as one unit and then the brass as the other unit, that they can sort of offset each other.
Nice. I saw that you use a breath controller when you are doing the brass and the winds. I've never used a breath controller. So how does that work?
Freaking love it.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to know what this is. I keep telling the tech control guys, if you're watching, I want to work with you, because
Nice.
I love their product. I have it on the ground actually here.
Yeah, you actually made me want to get one. I got one a few months ago. And,
have you used it?
Yeah. I was messing around with like setting it up to where it was controlling modulation, and it's really cool, especially for trying to simulate how wind players would play, but also just being able to have two hands on the keyboard, or even using it in a way of like, because a lot of our libraries have like sound design ambiences with like two different layers. And I was like, well, that'd be kind of cool to be able to like play some more sound design ambient stuff, but then using the breath controller to like go between layers. So that was another reason why I wanted to mess with it. So it's really handy.
I use it, with most everything, and then if anything, I'll just redraw the curves. But I can get an idea of what the curves would be. Like strings, I tend to redraw the curves because they don't attack the same way that winds and brass do. Because when I'm doing winds and brass, I'll be pushing notes out with the breath. So and strings don't really work that way. They're a lot more flowing. So I'll usually have to redraw it. But yeah, this is it. Tech Control MIDI breath controller. Freaking love this thing. And it's not that, I think the cheap one is like $100, $120, something like that. I got it on a whim because I saw, I think it's Jeremy Soule using it in one of his Skyrim videos. And I was like, what is that? And then, I think I teared up the day I played it. It was like exactly what I wanted at that time. Cause I had a clarinet VST and I remember plugging and playing it. And I was like, oh, I can perform now. Because I'm a performer, I do a lot of stuff with keyboards. So this felt like a really natural extension for me. So now it's breath controller, right hand on the keys, and then left hand on fader. And I can usually get most of the stuff that I need in one pass.
Nice. Wow. Yeah, the first person I ever saw using one was, I don't know if you've ever heard of Mike Verda.
That's where I learned a lot of the programming stuff too. Yeah,
because he's a big advocate of performing. That's why he likes certain libraries that are more kind of performance based. And he was talking about like, I don't like drawing all this stuff in, like, I play it in, and his mock-ups sound awesome. That dude.
Yeah. Like, I'm the same way. I just mostly just because it doesn't feel musical to me if I can't perform it in, like, I mean, I'll go over, in most cases, I'd rather re-perform it and have it sound right than just get it in and then tweak it in post. That's just how I am. Not everybody's like that, but I need it to sound right when I do the capture record before I move on.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So you have it set up, it like plugs in USB, and then you control modulation with it most of the time, or what are you controlling with it? Okay.
Yeah, I'm just doing modulation. You can program anything, and they did send me one that is a little bit more advanced, where you can do bite and tilt.
Oh wow.
I just haven't tried it yet because I'm not sure how that's going to look on camera.
Yeah, you're just like, looks like you're like, man, he's feeling it.
Yeah, and I got to like talk at the same time and be like, all right, so this one, like, I don't know if that's going to work or not.
What's
but
he chewing on?
Yeah. I do have it. I probably should try it to see how I like it. But honestly, like this, just having modulation has been enough for me because, like I said, I got the fader right here. I programmed that, and plus, I'm not sure I want everything to be controlled like with my head. Like
Right.
I feel like there is, you obviously you can have a little bit more control with your fingers with a lot of the stuff. So the breath control is just modulation pretty much, but you can control the sensitivity. So I'll have the sensitivity higher because I know how to play it better. And so now I wind up exerting a lot more air than I used to. And that's what, you have to adjust it. Otherwise you're hitting like 127 the whole time that you're actually playing the thing.
Yeah, you're barely blowing it. It's like, psh, yeah. I think I might have stole your settings from the video that you were talking about it, just to like, oh, okay, well,
they're not that exciting. Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
You can steal them.
It's not the secret sauce.
How dare you?
So you retweeted Anne Catherine Dern, and she said, you can't judge a film score without the context of the medium it's meant to serve. And she's talking about games as well, but divorcing it from its intended medium deprives it of a lot of function and meaning. So do you have any movies or TV shows or video games that you have gone back to over and over again to kind of experience the music with the media? Or any scores that you've studied and like watched over and over again?
When I was in college, I actually did get to do an exercise like that. That was pretty eye-opening for the movie Up, which I was already really into. I chose Up because I love that soundtrack and that movie. But yeah, we had this. It was a bit painful of an exercise. It was something to the effect of we had to. Well, it was actually for sound design, come to think of it. So we had to do every sound that we heard. We had to add to a spreadsheet chronologically of what the sound was, how we thought it was made, and what it evoked, which took a really long time.
Big task, yeah.
Yeah. But the whole idea was it was actually a sound design course, and the whole idea was basically just getting you to listen more actively, and also kind of challenge your ear a little bit more, notice what you're hearing versus what you're seeing, and focus on it. And so I was actually a nerd and inspired by that. And so I did that for the music as well, about themes, things like that. When I don't notice a theme would come in and under what context. And I think I retweeted that because I think that when we grow up or when we find a soundtrack we really like, we get so caught up on the music, we tend to just listen to the music. At least I did. Very few of us will go and only listen to music when we actually watch the movie. But Giacchino, actually, the Up composer, I remember said that the way he used to learn when he was young was he would tape record the movie, like go to a theater, tape record it, and then he would go back and listen. And so he had the added benefit of hearing how the music was interacting with the dialogue.
Yeah.
And for me, I was like, I never considered that. And there's so much that gets cut from the soundtracks too. If you go and listen to the soundtrack and then you go watch the film, a lot of the underscorey elements, stuff that the silences, it all gets cut. And so I think composers tend to go in writing film music that tends to be a little bit too present, that tends to not have a lot of silence, and underscore becomes a really difficult thing to score because they don't have any musical frame of reference that they've been studying. They're just listening to like the big bangers of these soundtracks, and it's like, oh, so that's what film music is, and they apply that everywhere.
Yeah, make it as busy as possible.
Yeah, I mean, I'm guilty of it too, but like actually the Powell stuff has been really cool because he's been releasing those deluxe editions, which have like the cues that aren't in the main soundtrack, and the Omni scores have all of it, and it shows like what is happening on screen when each musical cue is happening. Even if you don't read sheet music and you're just scrolling along to, when things look dense or not on the score, it's still really useful because you can understand, you can follow along to like how he was thinking when he scored it, which I think is really essential. And you don't get that if you don't have the movie.
Yeah. Have you seen John Powell's Mixed with the Masters stuff that he did? It's like a free dude. I was actually rewatching that again the other day because going back to like what you were saying, how like a lot of the stuff that seems like it's just like a piano thing, like you can see it like in the wave files, like there's like more in the strings going on, but then here it's more brass dominant, and or when stuff's blending together, or how he was talking about creating these like fast runs to like connect with what's going on the screen, and just that alone, I was just like, wow, like it's like that's a perfect example of he's not doing a lot of overwriting, like everything is like very purposeful, or not just all guns blasting at one time kind of thing, and that's why it stuff sounds so good.
And using it as a reference too, like I just intuited from seeing the piano rolls, like, okay, what, I don't know if he like uses piano sketching or not. Actually, I'm pretty sure he doesn't, because I've talked to his assistant Batu about this, and as far as I know, Batu said he almost never does like piano sketching. Batu or Powell, I think. I don't want to like misspeak for it, but because that's an extra step that takes a lot of time to do the sketching. So, but I know that they use it as the roll as like a corrective device, because like you said, you can see it. You can see when things are muddy. And that was something I intuited from watching the piano rolls, which is a point that I usually try to talk to students about, is like a lot of the things that I've learned probably have come from asking questions about things as opposed to being given answers. Like I'm a big believer in, when you study something, you're going to get as much as you ask out of it. And so I try to ask a lot of questions about stuff that I'm studying and just make up what I think is the best answer and then move forward with that. And that's I think how people find their voice too, and their own approach to how they write music, because
totally.
Yeah, you can't get spoon-fed like different answers, and everybody composes differently. So whatever answer you generate for these things is going to influence how you actually move forward with your style.
Yeah, I completely agree, and like that's why I think I've been such a fan of Danny Elfman over the years, because like it came from like the band background. Like I don't know if you've seen he did this thing with Amoeba where he was like what's in my bag, and he was talking about all his musical influences. It's really cool.
I know that. I know Amoeba. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like he's just going into his record shop and he's like talking about all the music from like really like Django Reinhardt to Nine Inch Nails to like Stravinsky, and it's just like wow, like, but that's what makes him sound so unique. And I think that I'm sure his approach was very different than someone like Alexander Desplat or like composers like that.
I'm sure. Yeah, and the more interviews you see with these guys, you realize everybody writes totally differently too. Like Dario Marianelli, I've seen an interview where he uses Breath Controller too, but he doesn't write to click apparently.
Oh yeah, what a disaster, man.
I probably wouldn't want to be his assistant, because I think that would be a lot of work. But I also can see a lot of instances where that would be super cool to do.
Yeah, because if you can, his music's beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like that, right? Like it sort of sounds flowing and unchained. Which is really cool. But, I think that you can't take any one person's advice or any one person's style and just try to absorb it all. Like I am kind of a perpetual student, and I definitely, if I see a template that really inspires me, I'll like absorb a lot of it, or a workflow. I'll always try something, but then ultimately you have to come back to what feels best for you. And this is sort of like retrospective advice for myself, because if I did anything differently from a composer I admired, I'd be like, this is the wrong way to do it. And so over time I've learned to be like, no, it's just about like what works best for you and what helps you generate music you're proud of, and that's what's important.
Yeah. So what are some things that you've been studying now in your stage of your career?
Honestly, I've been focusing a lot more on the content creation aspect of it. I've spent a long time just focused on the craft of writing music and orchestrating and mixing and mastering and composing. And the last few years, I was really doing mostly composing in terms of like my day-to-day, what my hours were, and a lot less on YouTube, even though I'd get videos out. But over time, I've recognized, speaking of like doing what feels best for yourself, that content creation is something that's really important to me as well, and also is kind of feeding my composition goals as well, because I wind up getting clients who find me from YouTube, and those clients are almost always amazing to work with, because they already know who I am. They already have some level of trust with me, with the expertise that I might have. There's a bit of leverage that I have as the person being approached that allows me to have good relationships with those people. So most of my time now is actually not spent studying scores. It's like studying how to make a better thumbnail, how to make a better title, how to do an intro on a YouTube video that doesn't make people drop off. Like I'm spending more time in that, because I never really studied that formally ever. I was always studying music. So now I've been like, I should learn how to make a good video. So
Are there any YouTube creators that you watch that maybe get some inspiration from? Like, because I've watched people like Peter McKinnon, guys that have
Yeah.
these like big followings, like completely different than what I do. But I'm like, there's something here with these people because that they're getting a lot of people watching and probably hanging in there. But
Yeah.
just kind of like just to get inspiration.
I mean, I take inspiration from a ton of people. If there's anything that I have a couple folders, like I have a folder called thumbnails I clicked on. Nice. And anytime I click on a thumbnail that really I gravitate towards, I'll just screen cap it and save it because I'm like, there must be something about that drew me in. Mm-hmm. So I pay attention to that. Like my opening little thing where my name comes up at the bottom. I think I got that from like some video about a psychologist, and it came up on the bottom with their name. And I was like, man, that's just so cool. Cause now I don't have to introduce myself every time. Mm-hmm. I can have it come up and explain what I do, but it's always just like bits and pieces of things. Yeah. It's not like, I think as a composer, I was much more influenced in a very like unidirectional way, where it was like a very small handful of people influenced like a lot of stuff I do. But as a video maker, it's way more spread out, and it's pretty much just any bits and pieces that I gravitate towards.
Yeah, I agree.
But with that said, though, I'll say like Ann. I love Ann's channel. Mm-hmm. Mattia Chiappa. He's my buddy. I love Mattia.
Yeah, I like his channel. I've been like I usually watch all his videos when he drops them because yeah, like you guys been doing some stuff too. Where like I know you were for a while doing those like writing in the style of like, oh, we're gonna listen to this track, and like I noticed he's been doing that a little bit too with like a piece of music he really likes and trying to like figure out the orchestration, which I really like those kinds of videos.
I'm considering doing more of those too, because those are really fun, and it's also nice because you can link to the pop culture aspect, which is really helpful for videos because we're already doing such niche videos. Like to your point about some of those creators that have a lot of viewership that are composers or musicians. I don't know if I'll ever have that. Like I'm okay with that because I think what I'm doing is incredibly niche for an incredibly niche audience. Like the fact that masterful orchestration video popped off a little bit I was like, why? Because that's like such a random subject, and maybe I'll be proven wrong, but I'm also equally content with like being a small niche, popular small niche channel too, sure. Because that kind of audience is really dedicated towards you. And the broader you paint your audience, like maybe the more viewership you get, but also I think the less focused your audience will be too. Mm-hmm. So right now my audience is really focused. Like they're a very focused, specific group of people for the most part. And so, I think there's trust between me and my audience and what I make.
Yeah. I mean, you're itching toward 60K subscribers, man.
Yeah,
like
that's true.
That's no small feat, dude.
I know.
Give yourself some credit.
I know. Well, I think some of them too are there from like my piano days as well, because like I said, when I did a piano duet channel with my buddy Frank back in college, and like our solo channels were doing really well, but our duet channel had I think 300,000 subscribers.
Oh wow!
So we had experience with making videos and stuff that applied into our solo stuff as well afterwards. Although I think now we both make better content than we did when we had more subscribers. But so I think a lot of the bleed over is still like, I think there's still people on my channel that are like, wait, what does this guy do now? Because I was just doing piano covers back then. But still, the numbers don't hurt. They look good. So that helps with different things for sure.
Yeah, like one of the things that we talk about sometimes on these podcasts is like, you can't control what you're famous for kind of thing. Like you've been doing some of those like reaction videos, and was it the God of War one got some?
That one actually did well. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it got like 200,000 or something. It might be more now, but
but it's crazy. Yeah. It's like, you think, oh, I'll just do this reaction video, and you're like, whoa, like, but then you don't want to be that reaction video guy. So it's just kind of like,
like it's also like, that you can't control what you're famous for is I think I feel that a lot too, because for a long time I kept YouTube making videos as sort of like a quiet thing that I did. Like, I'm a composer. And I also make YouTube videos. Like it was a very, because there's a stigma behind like what it means to be a content creator, and I didn't know any other composers that were doing that, and the composers I admired weren't doing that. And so, like I said, for a while, I felt like that was not what I should be doing to be considered a serious composer. Probably had baggage from school and stuff, but over time, I've definitely leaned into it more and embraced it because I think it's part of what makes me unique. And also, I think you have to listen to what people are saying too. I mean, like, I get an insane amount of positivity on my channel and hearing people how it helps them out and informs them or inspires them. And I think, yeah, you can't control what you're famous for, but I think it's good to lean into things that resonate with people, so long as you don't absolutely hate it. And I don't. I love making YouTube videos. So I think that, yeah, it's a bit of both. It's like, I don't think you wind up doing what you think you're going to be doing as you grow into your career. It always changes a little bit. Yeah. But I think you're at peace with yourself when you can accept like what people resonate with and what resonates with you and find a way for them to coexist.
Yeah, totally.
When you first start, like before college or whatever, and you're like, you have a one-dimensional idea of what you want to do. Like, I want to write music for film, and that's it. And you don't realize that there's like a whole world of jobs out there involved and wrapped up in that. Like, I also have to do taxes, and I also have to like manage people, and all of a sudden I might add teaching to my job, and it turns out I'm good at teaching. And so there's like, it can evolve a lot, and that's okay.
I'm sure it's true for you guys too, because I mean, being involved, I mean, you guys are doing YouTube as well, but you're also involved with, VST creation, and like, I'm sure that, I mean, did you guys grow up thinking you were going to make VSTs, or was it sort of like more streamlined? Yeah.
Yeah, not. I mean, I always knew I wanted to do something involved with music, because I mean, I was a guitar player, played in bands and toured and stuff, but then I didn't want to do the touring thing, but started doing YouTube because there was other guys who I followed, and I was like, oh, that's cool. Like, like use it as a means of put your music out there, or maybe like do some reviews. And, I always knew I wanted to do something with music, or like a music company, whether it was like a guitar company or whatever. But, I just kind of found myself really enjoying like using virtual instruments and getting into orchestration, because I wanted to combine orchestra and death metal. Like, that was like the thing I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So, so I later on was like, oh, I want a choir, found Soundiron, and then just kind of grew from there, and turned into a really cool opportunity that I never thought I was going to do. So I definitely feel you on the whole, like just trying different stuff, and then, hey, like this is actually kind of going somewhere. Like, what if I just go down this road for a little bit?
Yeah. Yeah, and you can't deny like when something grows too. I mean, like if something's doing well, it's not inherently a bad thing. Like I would push up against that so much, like because our duet channel was really goofy. It was ridiculous.
You guys dressing like Zelda and stuff.
Oh yeah. Okay, you've seen it. Yeah, we would dress up. I mean, our vlogs were us like burping and stuff. Like, it was just ridiculous. But like, people liked it, gravitated towards it, and like a lot of positivity came from it. And so we're like, all right, we can run away from this. We can lean into it. So we leaned into it for as long as we felt inclined to, and then we were ready to move on. We moved on. So yeah,
that was a different age of YouTube. For sure.
Yeah, for sure. And honestly, I think we changed directions at the right time, because I think it's really, really hard for music cover musicians to do like 3-minute videos on YouTube and have them do well. I think that's really hard to do these days, because YouTube that's like not a sweet spot for YouTube videos.
Yeah.
They want like something where they can put a lot of ads on it, or they want like a short. But like a 3-minute video is like, it just doesn't perform well. And that's what we were noticing, was like we'd put an ungodly amount of hours into these things, and we'd do sheet music, arranging. It was so ridiculous and so unsustainable. Like,
it's like it was a full-time job, pretty much.
Yeah, like 40 plus hours, between the two of us. So like 80 hours combined for this video, and it would do, a couple thousand views, and it would generate like $15. We were like, yeah, we can't do this long term. It's not going to work.
Yeah. I know you've mentioned that you got some jobs from YouTube, like the FlashGit stuff, right? You said that they found you on there. How did you get hired on as writing additional music for the Kung Fu Panda stuff?
So that one was, as I guess they all are, a very happy, weird coincidence. But when I moved out here to LA, I was looking for people to connect with, and I'm from Connecticut originally, and weirdly enough, there's a composer out here who went to the same high school as I did, but 7 years before me. His name is Bob Lydecker. And so I'm like, okay, well, he's a media composer out here. I'm like, I gotta meet this guy. So I met him over coffee, and we chatted on and off for probably about, I would say, 2 years. Like, not very much, but like maybe 3 or 4 encounters. Like, I'll just catch up. Bob was a super nice guy. And I remember the last time that I talked to him, his wife had a kid on the way. And he was mentioning that he had just gotten the Kung Fu Panda gig. And I said something like, oh man, that's amazing. Like, that's the kind of gig that like I'm trying to work towards. That's like my dream gig. And, we just go on the conversation. And then like 2 months later, he's like, would you want to help me on this? And I remember the email just said pandas. And I was like, oh my God. And he basically took a chance on me. I mean, I've talked to him afterwards about it because he's seen me make videos where I talk about it. And he says that he just thought I was a nice guy and he trusted my work ethic. I like to think that part of that is because I stay active online and try and make people hear my music. I don't even want people to know that like I'm the reason why they know that I can write music. Because it's kind of a subconscious thing. It's just like you just watch a video and you're like, oh, Zach composes. So I don't know. It's hard to tell like how much of it's from making YouTube videos and not. But most of it was just through interacting with him and not being pushy and just focusing on building a relationship, which is what I always tell people. And I know people hate that advice, but it's like you can't, if you go in trying to get work, people feel that. And it's a really it doesn't feel good to be the one who's being approached being like, do you have any work you can give me? It just doesn't feel good. So I just focused on building a good relationship with him as a starter and got work from it.
Totally. How was the experience working on that as far as like what you learned? And
freaking blast.
Yeah.
My work just ended like a couple weeks ago and I already miss it, honestly. Like first of all, Bob is an amazing boss. I mean, he's so smart, but not pushy, and was able to direct me in ways that was really like, he made me a better writer because he would just say like, hey, I think I would have approached this scene a little differently. And one of the things I really learned and really grew during that gig was not using all my energy too early on a scene. Because I'd get these scenes and I'd be basically just dropped in. So it'd be like a 20-minute episode and be like, okay, score from 13 minutes to 14 minutes. And if it was a fight sequence, I would score it thinking it was like a climax of a thing. I wouldn't watch before or after because deadlines could sometimes be tight. And I'd be like, okay, just go. And then I would finish this, epic cue and then watch like a minute later. And that would be like part 1 of this 5-part fight. And I'd be like, I see. I'm not the center of attention. So it really taught me about like layers of the story. And I think I got good at being dropped in at any point in the story of this like 20-minute arc and figuring out like what level of intensity I'm asked to provide and scoring different action scenes differently, like based on whether someone's winning or losing or what's at stake in the scene. Like it just made me a better scorer to picture because I was able to tackle tons of different types of scenes and tons of different types of sad scenes or angry scenes. Like it was just a blast. I miss it very much. I miss writing for Poe. That was very fun.
Yeah. I think I remember you saying something about how like when you were, having to write a lot of action cues, like using different instrumentation, not always just kind of like, all things blasting at one time kind of thing. Like, oh, like maybe it's more percussion or using other instrumentation. I thought that was a really cool tip as far as
I would challenge myself because like, I'd get a lot of action sequences, because I put a per minute limit. I was like, I can give you 2 minutes per week, which is part of also why I think I love the gig all the way through. Was I never got burnt out because we agreed on how much where we would cap it.
You had good boundaries.
Yeah. And that was, kudos to Bob for even doing that. because I've worked with some composers don't do that. But because I got a lot of action cues, because he would be like, okay, so Zach can do 2 minutes in this scene. I'm going to give him the actions. I assume that's what he did. Like I would do a lot of action scenes, and eventually I was like, maybe this is an opportunity to try doing some of them differently instead of just going with the gut, whatever my gut instinct was. So I remember I did one cue where I was like, I'm going to do the whole thing in a non-fixed meter. I'm going to just try and make it all like totally irregular all the way through. Or I did another cue that I was like, I'm going to make this a groove-based action cue. Or this one, like one of the last cues I did, I was like, I'm not adding percussion till afterwards. And I was able to learn about my process and what I liked or disliked about each of those styles of composing just by challenging myself to go out of the box a little bit. So doing the same thing over and over again actually gives you an opportunity to try it different ways and see what works or doesn't for you.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of composers that would like almost like cringe at the having to do an action cue, especially if you're doing like production music or library music and stuff. And it's like, all right, we're doing this album of like driving epic action. You're just like after the second or third one, because I've done that with docu scores, and I would just be like, I don't know, like what am I gonna do? Am I just gonna keep doing like trailer music or something, or just making it like that? It's like, so it's
I think the problem is that like at least what I struggled with was I would see action music, like I wouldn't take it seriously in a way. It's sort of like, if you zoom out too far, you're just seeing it as like a generic thing. It's like, write comedy music. It's like, what does that actually mean? Because what's comedic about it? Like, is it funny because like with Flash Gits has taught me a lot about writing for comedy, because there I've had to do comedy in a lot of different ways. Like, am I making it funnier with a little goofy thing, which is what the default is? Or am I making it funny by like driving up an emotion that's on screen to exaggerate the ridiculousness of it? And those two types of music are going to be completely different. Just like with action, it's like, you could do like, oh, it's action time and like just badassery. But you could also do like Duel of the Fates is a really interesting one because it feels like there's so much, like the world is at stake in that cue. And it's taking itself seriously and it feels dramatic. And actually, I don't think there's very much percussion at all in Duel of the Fates. So it's like you can score it without just being like action time. And I think that the more you take it seriously and try and think about the stakes or what your role is really as the composer, I think that's what makes it fun to write music for those different genres, even if you don't like them.
Yeah, I've seen some of the Flash Gits ones. Like the God of War one you did was really good, especially because I remember
a fun one.
Yeah, I remember you did the like breaking down some of the music examples and you nailed it on that one. Like a lot of the ones I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, that was fun. I like the ones where I get to like manipulate themes and stuff, especially music I like, because I love that soundtrack so much. So I came to like it after I did the review of it, listening to it in real time. So yeah, my reactions were genuine. I really, really like that soundtrack. But yeah, It's fun to manipulate it, think about thematic stuff, but also like ham up different things, for comedic effect.
Totally.
Could you tell us about a personal project you're excited about right now?
Like with stuff that I'm working on?
Yeah.
So some of it is NDA.
Understood.
But but I will say that I am planning on doing some courses. That's something that I'm planning on soon. I'm probably going to be doing them in modules. I was getting ambitious at trying to do them all at once, and I'm like, I don't think I can do this. So I'm planning on releasing
or mixing
a little bit of everything. The ultimate goal is to have courses for like all aspects. So I want to do one on music business, my take on music business, orchestration for sure, composition. Definitely want to do one on scoring where I have some MIDI examples because I don't get to do that very much on YouTube because of copyright strikes. That's the game plan. And then I want to do also like a starter pack for composers just getting started. That's kind of like a simplified version of all of those things in one course, because I think my audience is at different levels. So that's probably the biggest thing I have planned personally. Some of the composition stuff is more like either small or NDA, but that's like the big plan for this year is to start working on that.
Nice. That's cool.
So
that's a big job for sure.
It's gonna be a lot of work. It's gonna be a lot of recording, but I think it'll be worth it.
Oh yeah. I just have a few more questions, and then we can wrap it
Sure.
up. These are kind of quicker questions. The first one is a best recent purchase under $100.
Oh,
It can
Good
be
question.
it can be software, it can be hardware. It doesn't have to be music related. And it's something that you've purchased recently under $100 that you would recommend to other people.
it's not super recent, but I would say that this Sparrow, the fader, was I think just under $100 and a lot cheaper than most faders I see out there. I think the guy does it on it's either eBay or Etsy, but you can customize them. 4 faders. I'll customize what the CC values are. One of my favorite faders I've ever gotten.
Oh, that sounds awesome. I haven't heard of
it's
that.
Sparrow. Yeah, it's Sparrow faders.
Oh, okay.
It's really good. Yeah, I recommend.
The next one is favorite YouTube channel or podcast or TV show at the moment. Something you've been enjoying recently.
Okay. I would say my favorite podcast right now is from the future. It's FUTUR. I always recommend this channel to composers or creative people because Christo and the guys at the future are just, it's insane how much free advice they give away about scaling a business as a creative person. I think that their stuff is phenomenal. A lot of the business advice I give is stuff that I learned from that channel and that podcast. So yeah, I think they're freaking ridiculously amazing.
I haven't heard of that. I will check that out right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's geared towards graphic designers, but it doesn't matter because it's all the same, really.
Yeah.
Like making a living as a creative person, it's all the same. So really good advice about like charging, how to position yourself as an expert, how to deal with client objections, like maybe boring stuff to some people, but for me, it's like invaluable.
Yeah, it's just gold. You're just like taking it all. Yeah,
exactly.
All right, my last question is: what goals do you see yourself achieving in the next few years? What's next for Zach?
I think that I would like to continue doing what I'm doing, but bigger. I feel really content actually with the balance I have. Most of what I am trying to do these days is actually just stay in alignment with myself and being aware of if I'm leaning too heavily into something, if I'm doing too much composing or not enough composing. And then once I find that sweet spot, basically trying to preserve it as I scale. So whether that means getting more people to help me and build a bigger team, which is one of my goals, or if it means figuring out how to do less but better, which is another one of my goals, I'm pretty much just trying to do that. But my goals have definitely shifted from, they used to be, I want to write music for Pixar. Now they're just like, I want to keep what I've got as I continue to grow upwards. So that's the goal, just doing more of what I'm already doing, but scaling it.
Love it. Yeah, keep the train rolling.
Exactly. You got it.
Nice.
All right. We will point people to where will we point people? We will point people to your YouTube channel so they can check out your great videos and learn about orchestration and mixing and Mario Brothers and so much more. So Zach, thanks so much for coming on, man.
My pleasure, guys.
All right.
Man, appreciate
Catch
it.
you soon.
Yep. Talk soon.